If you're lucky in life, you will encounter some magic moments in time when you know what you're doing is exciting and to some degree is needed.
There's a part of me that says there'd be no MTV without video art, there'd be no digital video on your desktop without video art. There'd be no real penetration of media as a demystified something that people could play with if not for video art and the TV lab.
We knew we were doing something that nobody else had ever done in the world. How exciting is that?
Imagine a television series that combines performance, documentary,
it's very good money in it,
drama, and video art to create a mix of experimental local and national programs that revolutionize television, win major awards, and build significant careers. That was the TV Lab at Channel 13, WNET, New York Public Television.
Television today is much more of a commercial medium. The bottom line is much more important than any kind of artistic creation. Sometimes I hope that webcasting will open the door to the kind of creativity that we, and freedom, that we enjoyed, back in the mid-70s.
When the web gets to its fastest changing the channels on television, okay, in real-time, high-quality video, that's the medium of the future for video. You tell me when that's going to happen, and then you will have another revolution. I guarantee it.
You have to understand the context, okay? You had 3 national channels, period. There was no portable cameras. People did not have access to this technology. It was a tight, kind of controlled, fixed world, and things were done in a certain way. So when young people, when artists, when social activists coming out of the late 60s realized that this new portable equipment was going to be available and probably was going to take us into the future, they immediately saw political, social, and artistic creative uses of that technology.
Korean-born avant-garde musician and video artist Nam June Paik was crucial to every aspect of the television laboratory. Trained as a musician in Japan and Germany, Paik adapted audio synthesizers to co-invent the first video synthesizer.
Shuya Abe, a Japanese electronics engineer, designed and built one of the first video synthesizers. Using inexpensive black and white cameras, they devised a special color encoder that in effect allows artists to paint electronic pictures. Paik envisaged it as a video piano at which the artist could play and compose the new music of today.
So I want to make time visible, and time you can grasp each section of time and put on space. That is our dream.
There's no one like Nam June. Nam June really wrote this medium, and it was very much because of who Nam June was, the brilliance, the genius of Nam June, that the TV Lab was created and continued.
Artists always do something which mainline culture don't do. And since Hollywood and then NET is making so many interesting shows, artists has to make boring shows. And suddenly, if Hollywood and NET start making very boring shows, we will make exciting shows.
In this world of ordinary people, extraordinary people, I'm glad there is you.
It was not just a flash in the pan. We were talking about a genuine phenomenon, and it has broadened everyone's vision.
2/3 open your eyes.
The ability to manage people. It was highly controversial. I mean, obviously there were many people who said, I don't want that sort of thing on my television set.
It was a time of great ferment, of great uncertainty, where the young people were the ones that were really kind of leading the society. In that context, the conditions here in a public broadcasting station was, let's open the door and let's experiment.
Nam June Paik's Global Groove just set me on fire. It was like, yes, this is it. There's somebody else doing this. There's somebody doing this. Is licensed to create.
He was this huge ball of energy. His brain worked faster than the words could come out, and the words came out sometimes in Korean and sometimes in English, and it was just this whole hodgepodge.
Nam June Paik had the ear of Howard Klein at the Rockefeller Foundation, and Nam June can be very persuasive.
The whole idea about the TV lab was an environment conducive to creativity. It's literally one where an artist could put their hands on the camera, you know, without the union saying you're not qualified.
Shake that and then shout, son of a bitch, or something like that. Don't say such thing, but three letters.
I just didn't quite get the topless cellist thing, but I certainly got the fact that he was a very avant-garde artist.
Nam June Paik was, you know, instrumental in helping me to get, you know, money from places like the Rockefeller Foundation to do my work. And he wanted to make a video that centered on the war in the Pacific, and specifically Japanese and Americans in the Pacific Islands. His testament to that is really the Guadalcanal Requiem piece, and I think it's one of the best pieces he's ever done. I had the privilege of going there and shooting some of the footage for him, kind of pickup shots mainly, because Nam June, again, the other thing he was an incredible operator. He just saw connections everywhere. He said to Howard Klein and Rockefeller Foundation, he said, hey, I know a young video artist, very, very cheap. His father works for Pan Am Airlines. You don't have to pay the ticket. And you can send him, he only needs a few $100s. He's young. So he sent me off to Guadalcanal.
So when Nam June used to come into the studio, he would sit there and he would he'd put on 2 tapes and he'd just go like this, and he'd punch the buttons in and out, in and out, in and out. And that, because that was the, you know, the format of his television.
It was the Nam June editing technique, which is you lay down one cut, and then you take another tape and you play it and you go in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. Then you take another tape and you play it down and you go in, out, in, out.
Within a year or so, computer editing was invented and timecode, and now we have to have the burn-in on the image. Oh, beauty, beauty, miracle, miracle. But what he would do eventually, what I would help him do, is take this and reproduce it on 2-inch. I would go to his house and I would sit in front of a machine, and frame by frame, I'd write down all the numbers, all the timecode numbers for these 7-frame shots, 4-frame shots, you know, and he'd feed me giant bowls of ginseng tea, and then take me out and feed me steaks. And then he'd walk down the street with me and he'd pull your bra, you know, and he'd go, why do you wear a bra? Why do you wear a bra? He's pointing.
Why do you wear a cummerbund?
Oh, I've destroyed my stomach.
Keeps my kidneys warm.
Yes, he had a very sensitive stomach. He had a lot of food issues. And he kept his stomach warm all the time by wrapping himself with multiple sweaters.
I think he had a nervous stomach and warm up the stomach. But I think that comes from his nerve. Anxiety. You worry about too much, comes to your temperature drop and stomach become like a nervous and cold, doesn't good digestion, you know, food comes, and so he always warm up too, yeah.
What was he worried about then?
Money. Video artist, without money you can make it. All his life he worry about money. How you pay the rent, how you pay your editing time, how you buy the new hardware, how I paid more TV. That's all Nam June care.
This is one-line television. And it's like, people ask me why you make so exciting not boring videotapes. My answer is my first 60s, early 60s, I did intensely, minimal art, minimal aesthetics, boring. Before that word came off, so I don't want to repeat my early days, I would rather be corrupted than repeating this sublime age.
When did you get married to Nam June?
77.
77?
Long time ago. Long time. It took me a long time, too.
But you met him in 64, didn't you?
63, 64 in Tokyo. Yeah. Long time. Life takes time. You like slow boat to China.
What the TV Lab was great opportunities for creative people to make work and to distribute it. It was also a place for artists to bump into each other, for creative, like-minded people to come together, for television broadcasters from within WNET and the public system to be in regular conversation with serious documentarians and artists. We as artists were very present also at Input, the International Public Television Conference for a number of years. And to be a part of that dialogue throughout the world was very significant at the time.
The lab was safe at NET so long as it wasn't in space that anybody else wanted, right? Mm-hmm. So in a sense it had to be in sort of not high rent space, the lab. Yeah. Because the station never valued it. The station never fully understood what it had.
And I remember it being looked down upon so much. Everybody at the station treated the TV Lab like it was kind of the armpit of New York.
Why?
Because we were
low
working
budget.
Talk about low budget. Low budget. We were using illegal personnel. We were, everything was still being shot on film or 2-inch tape, and it was, it was just trash.
Even Nam June too, he couldn't make a living in New York, and he had to go to Europe for teaching. Academy in Düsseldorf invited Nam June to come over to teach. That was 77 after Documenta. And then that, I said, Nam June, now you do art. I said, Nam June, now you do video art. Focus the museum and the gallery like I'm doing. I'm happy TV Lab closed. I said, finally he can do the video art.
The Whitney Museum honored Nam June Paik with the first ever museum retrospective for a video artist in 1982. The exhibition traveled to the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago.
I, quote, took a sabbatical from the TV Lab and WNET and never came back.
In what year?
That was 1981. 1984 is when the TV Lab actually officially ceased existing.
Good morning, Mr. Orwell. Bonjour, Monsieur Orwell.
Paik turned to satellite broadcasting and created the first of 3 global gatherings, Good Morning, Mr. Orwell, on January 1st, 1984.
New York, from San Francisco, and the Pompidou Center in Paris.
And when the TV Lab finally had all the air sucked out of it, it was such a tragic time.
Without telling us, CPB pulled out its funding and gave it to Frontline. And as I say, maybe it was the time because a lot of stations were nervous about accepting the productions that we offered because, in fact, they were the independent vision. They were not the controlled PBS entity.
Almost never again has there been such a free-form series that combines so many different elements. And I think that more than anything shows how brave David was and also what a quagmire American TV is.
I didn't realize how beloved David Loxton was till I went to his funeral service, and the church was packed. I mean, it was the clear that he did a lot for a lot of people, and they all remembered it.
David would come up and say, "You have anything else in mind?" And that was the first for me. Nobody ever says that. You got anything else in mind?
Everything is merging into the computer. Now we've got a single tool that really unites sound and image, its manipulation, processing, its expression, composition. What's my nose? I'm trying to escape that tool called computer into going into space.
The forces that want to control and regulate and lock things in are ever present everywhere. I mean, it's not just in a pretty, tight, somewhat repressive regime like China. It's here in this country. It's in Western Europe. It's everywhere there. And you need structure and order. But what art has always been about is the people that want to defy that order and want to transcend it and want to bend it and break it open and see what's inside.
Television needs changing. It needs some vision. I mean, it's even more corporate and completely about the bottom line. Chasing after young male demographics is going to be the death of commercial television, I believe.
I've always argued that a public broadcasting system that depends upon audience support doesn't have to fear controversy, it has to fear indifference. If nobody pays any attention to it, no one sends it money. If you do controversial programming or programming that causes people to write angry letters, you probably get as many checks as you will get angry letters, which means, on the balance sheet, you're way ahead.
Nam June is the one who changed the whole aspect of money stocking because it became clear to him that putting money constantly into WGBH or into WNET was no longer necessary. The tools, the equipment, and the spread of the movement had grown so big that he recommended to the Rockefeller Foundation that maybe not the way to go. Just support the artist.